Few athletes in winter sports have demonstrated resilience like Lindsey Vonn, one of the most decorated alpine skiers in history. After a devastating crash during the 2026 Winter Olympics held in Milan-Cortina Winter Olympics 2026, the American champion faced one of the most difficult recoveries of her career. The accident caused severe injuries to her leg and ankle and required complex surgeries. Yet instead of stepping away from training, Vonn quickly returned to the gym, even arriving in a wheelchair. Her rehabilitation program focuses on seated strength training and highly controlled muscle activation designed to rebuild power while protecting her healing leg. Understanding this recovery process offers insight not only into elite sports medicine but also into the remarkable determination required to return from catastrophic injuries. How did Lindsey Vonn suffer such a serious injury during the Olympic competition? During a downhill run at the Winter Games, Vonn lost control at high speed and crashed violently. Downhill skiing often reaches speeds exceeding 120 km per hour, and even a small technical mistake can lead to enormous impact forces. The crash resulted in a complex fracture of the tibia in her left leg and a broken ankle on the opposite side. Doctors also discovered compartment syndrome, a dangerous condition in which swelling inside muscle tissue cuts off blood circulation. Emergency surgery was required to relieve the pressure and stabilize the damaged bones. Why was the surgery considered life-changing for her leg? The compartment syndrome created intense pressure within the muscle compartments of the leg. Without immediate surgical intervention, the swelling could have permanently damaged nerves and muscle tissue. Surgeons performed a fasciotomy, a procedure that opens the muscle fascia to relieve pressure and restore circulation. This operation prevented long-term tissue loss and allowed the doctors to stabilize the fractures using orthopedic hardware. The surgery not only repaired the bones but also saved the functional integrity of the leg. Why is Lindsey Vonn using a wheelchair while still going to the gym? After complex fractures and major surgery, athletes are typically forbidden from putting weight on the injured limb for an extended period. Using a wheelchair helps protect the leg while it heals. At the same time, complete inactivity would cause rapid muscle loss and weakness throughout the body. By traveling to the gym in a wheelchair, Vonn can maintain an intense training routine without risking additional damage to the healing structures. What is the purpose of her seated strength training program? The seated strength program allows Vonn to train her upper body, core muscles, and parts of her lower body without placing stress on the injured bones. Exercises performed in a seated position remove vertical load from the legs while still activating important muscle groups. This approach preserves strength, improves blood circulation, and maintains the neuromuscular coordination required for high-level skiing. How do isometric exercises help her recovery? Isometric exercises involve contracting muscles without moving the joint. For example, tightening the quadriceps while the knee remains still activates the muscle fibers without bending the joint or stressing surgical repairs. This method allows the body to maintain muscle activation and neural signaling while protecting healing tissues. Isometric training also helps maintain joint stability, which is essential for athletes returning to explosive sports like alpine skiing. Why is preventing muscle atrophy so important after surgery? Muscle atrophy begins almost immediately after immobilization. Research shows that major muscle groups such as the quadriceps can lose a significant portion of their strength within weeks of inactivity. For a downhill skier, the quadriceps are essential for absorbing impact forces, stabilizing the knees, and controlling high-speed turns. If muscle mass declines too much, returning to elite performance becomes far more difficult. Maintaining muscle activity during recovery helps preserve strength and accelerates rehabilitation later. How do sports scientists measure whether her muscles are still functioning properly? Sports medicine specialists often use electromyography, a technique that measures electrical activity inside muscles. Sensors placed on the skin detect signals generated when muscle fibers contract. By analyzing these signals, therapists can determine whether specific muscles are activating correctly and whether certain areas are weakening due to inactivity. Monitoring these signals helps guide training adjustments and ensures the rehabilitation process remains effective. Why bone density is another concern during long recovery periods. When bones are not exposed to regular mechanical loading, they gradually lose density and strength. This process can occur during long periods of immobilization or reduced movement. Maintaining some form of muscular contraction and circulation helps stimulate bone tissue and slow down this loss. For athletes like Vonn, protecting bone density is essential because skiing places extremely high forces on the legs and joints. Why downhill skiing requires extraordinary physical strength. Downhill skiing is one of the most physically demanding sports in the Winter Games. Athletes travel at extreme speeds and must maintain stability while absorbing constant vibrations and impact forces from the snow surface. The quadriceps and hip muscles must control powerful carving movements while the core stabilizes the entire body. A skier must react instantly to terrain changes while keeping precise balance on narrow metal edges moving across ice and snow. Why Lindsey Vonn's determination during rehabilitation is widely admired. Elite athletes often develop an extraordinary psychological resilience. Years of competition train them to handle pressure, setbacks, and physical pain. Vonn has already faced multiple serious injuries during her career, yet she repeatedly returned to the sport at the highest level. Her willingness to begin training again so soon after major surgery demonstrates the mindset that made her one of the greatest alpine skiers in history. What does the typical recovery timeline look like after injuries like these? The early phase of recovery focuses on protecting the surgical repairs and controlling swelling. Gradually, doctors allow limited movement and carefully controlled strength exercises. As the bones heal, athletes slowly return to weight-bearing training and eventually to dynamic exercises that rebuild balance, power, and coordination. For elite skiers recovering from complex fractures, the full rehabilitation process can take many months before returning to competitive speeds. Why her rehabilitation program is designed like a scientific engineering project. Modern elite sports recovery combines medicine, biomechanics, and performance science. Trainers analyze muscle activation patterns, joint mechanics, and force distribution during exercise. Every movement is carefully designed to stimulate muscles without damaging healing tissues. This scientific approach allows athletes to rebuild strength step by step while minimizing the risk of re-injury. Finally, the recovery journey of Lindsey Vonn after her devastating Olympic crash illustrates both the risks of elite downhill skiing and the remarkable advances in modern sports medicine. Through careful rehabilitation, seated strength training, and relentless determination, she continues to rebuild the physical power required for one of the fastest sports on Earth. Her story is not only about injury and recovery but also about resilience, discipline, and the scientific precision behind elite athletic performance. If you enjoyed this educational breakdown of Lindsey Vonn's recovery and the biomechanics behind her rehabilitation, remember to share the video with friends, leave a like, and subscribe to the channel for more detailed sports analysis and inspiring athlete stories.